In this video, you're going to learn what your employer almost certainly hopes you never find out. It's not a conspiracy. It's not some evil plot in a boardroom somewhere. It's something much simpler and much more common. Silence. The kind of silence that costs the average worker tens of thousands of dollars over a career, not because anyone lied to them, but because nobody ever volunteered the truth. Picture two employees, hired on the exact same day, same role, same starting salary. 5 years later, one of them is earning 40% more than the other. Same company, same performance reviews, same skill set. The only difference? One of them knew what to ask for, and the other one didn't. Stay with me until the end, because by the time this video is over, you'll know exactly what most employers never tell their employees and how to stop leaving money on the table. Let's start by ruling out the obvious explanations. Maybe you think the gap comes down to talent. The harder worker gets ahead, right? Not necessarily. Study after study on workplace compensation shows that performance and pay often correlate far less than people assume, especially past the first year or two on the job. Plenty of top performers stay flat for years, while average performers who simply ask the right questions at the right time quietly pull ahead. Maybe it's about luck, being in the right place at the right time. Luck plays a role in life, sure, but luck can't explain a 40% gap that repeats itself year after year across millions of workers in nearly every industry. Maybe it's about education then, or which university someone went to. Also not the full picture. Some of the widest pay gaps exist between people with the exact same degree, from the exact same school, doing the exact same job. So if it's not talent, not luck, not education, what is it? It's information, specifically. It's the information your employer has, and you don't. Here's the uncomfortable truth about the employer-employee relationship. Companies are not designed to proactively maximize what they pay you. They're designed to retain you at the lowest cost that keeps you from leaving. That's not villainy. That's just how the incentive structure works. Nobody at a company is rewarded for telling you to ask for more, which means, by default, the information that would help you the most is exactly the information nobody is going to volunteer. Before we go further, it helps to understand where this culture of silence actually came from, because pay secrecy isn't accidental. It was, for a very long time, deliberately encouraged. For most of the 20th century, discussing your salary with coworkers was treated as something close to a social taboo, considered rude, unprofessional, even suspicious. Many companies went further than simply discouraging the conversation. They wrote it directly into employee handbooks, explicitly asking staff not to discuss compensation with one another. For decades, this was technically not even legal in the way most people assumed. In the United States, the National Labor Relations Act has protected employees' right to discuss wages with coworkers since 1935, but very few employees ever knew that right existed, and even fewer companies went out of their way to mention it. The taboo persisted anyway, enforced not by law, but by culture and quiet social pressure. That culture served a very clear purpose. It prevented employees from comparing notes. Without comparison, nobody could easily discover that they were being paid less than a coworker doing the exact same job. Silence protected the gap. Only in recent years has this started to shift. A growing number of states and cities have passed pay transparency laws, requiring companies to disclose salary ranges in job postings. This is a meaningful step forward. But transparency in job postings alone doesn't automatically translate into transparency once you're already employed. Existing employees are still, in most workplaces, operating with far less information than the company sitting across the negotiating table from them. Which brings us to the actual name of what we're dealing with. It's called information asymmetry, and here's the simplest way to describe it. Every negotiation, every raise conversation, every benefits decision happens between two parties who don't have equal access to the same information. Your employer knows the full salary range for your position. They know the department's raise budget. They know how replaceable or irreplaceable you actually are. You, on the other hand, are often negotiating blind, guessing at numbers you can't verify, hoping your hard work gets noticed on its own. Let's talk about where this actually shows up, because it's not one single secret. It hides across 4 major areas. The first is salary negotiation itself. Most companies build a negotiation room from the very first offer, often 10 to 20% above the number they initially propose, but almost nobody tells you that. Instead, the first offer is presented as if it's fixed, final, and fair, when in reality it's frequently a starting point, not an ending point. A widely cited study from Columbia Business School found that candidates who negotiated their starting salary ended up earning, on average, between $5,000 and $7,000 more per year than those who simply accepted the first offer. Over a 30-year career with raises typically calculated as a percentage of your current salary, that single unasked question compounds into a difference worth well over $500,000. Read that again. $500,000. From one conversation that most people never have, simply because nobody told them it was even possible to have it. The second area is internal raises. Here's something most employees don't realize. In the vast majority of companies, raises are not distributed automatically based on performance. They're distributed based on budget conversations that happen behind closed doors, often once or twice a year, where managers advocate for a limited pool of money across their entire team. If you never explicitly ask your manager to advocate for you in that conversation, you're relying entirely on them remembering to do it unprompted in a meeting you're not even in. Employees who proactively request a raise backed by specific accomplishments get raises far more often than employees who simply wait and hope their good work gets noticed on its own. The third area is benefits that go completely unused. This is one of the most quietly expensive blind spots in the entire employment relationship. Many companies offer benefits like tuition reimbursement, mental health stipends, wellness allowances, retirement matching above the minimum, or professional development budgets, and a shockingly high percentage of employees never use them, simply because nobody explains what's actually available or how generous these programs often are. Take retirement matching as one example. If your company matches, say, 4% of your salary in retirement contributions, and you're only contributing 2%, you're leaving free money on the table. Money that's part of your total compensation, every single pay period, that you're simply not collecting. The fourth area is what happens when you're planning to leave. This is where information asymmetry becomes almost uncomfortable. Most companies have far more flexibility than they let on when a valued employee gives notice. Counteroffers, accelerated promotions, sudden budget approvals that were supposedly impossible the week before. None of that flexibility gets revealed until the moment you signal you might walk away. It's also worth understanding that this dynamic doesn't play out identically for everyone, because your leverage and the size of the information gap actually shifts quite a bit depending on your industry and your career stage. In highly competitive fields like technology or specialized engineering, where skilled workers are genuinely hard to replace, companies tend to have somewhat more built-in flexibility simply because the cost of losing a good employee and rehiring is so high. Negotiation in these fields is more normalized, more expected, and often less risky to attempt. In more traditional or highly structured industries like education, government work, or heavily unionized environments, pay scales are often more rigid and publicly defined by policy, which actually reduces the size of the information gap, but also reduces your ability to negotiate individually, no matter how much value you demonstrate. And in industries with high turnover and thinner margins like retail or hospitality, companies frequently rely most heavily on employees simply not knowing their options because the labor pool is large and individual negotiating power is often assumed to be low. This doesn't mean negotiation is impossible in these fields. It simply means it requires more preparation and more evidence to be effective. Career stage matters just as much as industry. Early in a career, the information gap tends to be at its widest. New workers often don't yet know what questions to ask, don't have a clear sense of market rates, and are simply relieved to have landed a job at all. This is precisely why the first few years of a career are so often where the largest, most permanent gaps get created. By the middle of a career, workers typically have more market knowledge, more confidence, and more leverage, but they also tend to become comfortable, which brings its own risk. Comfort can quietly replace curiosity, and people who once negotiated aggressively in their 20s sometimes stop asking questions altogether by their 40s, simply because the process feels less urgent when the immediate need has faded. Later in a career, workers often carry the most leverage of their working lives through accumulated expertise and institutional knowledge, but many hesitate to use it, assuming that changing jobs or negotiating aggressively is somehow less appropriate at that stage. In reality, this stage of a career is often when the return on a well-prepared negotiation is highest, precisely because the compounding window, through investments and retirement contributions, may be shorter, making every additional dollar count more, not less. Recognizing which combination of industry and career stage applies to your own situation is genuinely useful because it tells you how much friction to expect and how much preparation is worth investing before your next conversation. Let's put real numbers behind all of this, because abstract ideas about information asymmetry don't change behavior. Specific dollar amounts do. Imagine two people, let's call them employee A and employee B, both are hired at the same company, in the same role, for the same starting salary of $60,000. Employee A never negotiates the initial offer, never asks for raises beyond the standard annual cost of living adjustment, and never touches the optional retirement match above the minimum required contribution. Employee B negotiates the starting offer up by 8%, proactively requests a raise with documented accomplishments every year, and maximizes the full retirement match from year one. Run this forward 15 years, accounting for typical compounding raises and retirement growth at a historical average return. And the two employees, despite doing largely similar work, end up with a difference in lifetime earnings and retirement savings that frequently exceeds $200,000. Same company, same role, same 15 years, a $250,000 gap, built entirely from questions one person asked and the other person never thought to ask. Now let's make this personal with a more detailed story. Picture someone named Michael. Michael gets hired as a marketing coordinator at $52,000 a year, thrilled just to land the job after months of searching. He never negotiates the offer. He doesn't want to seem difficult before he's even started. For the first 2 years, Michael gets small annual raises, exactly matching the company's standard cost of living adjustment. He assumes that's simply how raises work everywhere. In year 3, a coworker mentions almost in passing that she requested a raise directly, backed by a list of her accomplishments, and received an increase nearly 3 times the standard adjustment. Michael had no idea that was even an option. Nobody in his onboarding, his reviews, or his day-to-day management ever mentioned it. He also discovers around this same time that the company offers a professional development stipend of $1,500 a year for courses and certifications, a benefit he'd never used because it was buried in a benefits portal he'd only opened once on his very first day and never looked at again. By year 5, once Michael starts proactively asking, requesting raises with documentation, using his professional development stipend, maximizing his retirement match, his trajectory changes completely. But those first 4 years of silence cost him thousands of dollars that are simply gone permanently, never to be recovered. Now let's look at the mirror image of Michael's story, because contrast makes the pattern even clearer. Picture someone named Elena, hired at the exact same company in a similar role around the same time as Michael, at a comparable starting salary. From her very first week, Elena does something most new hires never think to do. She quietly asks 2 or 3 trusted coworkers informally whether they'd be willing to share a general sense of their compensation range. Not exact numbers, necessarily. Just enough to understand roughly where she stood. She learns that her starting offer was on the lower end of what the role typically paid. Rather than accepting this passively, she goes back during her first review and points out, respectfully and with market research to back her up, that her compensation appeared to be below the typical range for her position and experience level. Her manager, somewhat surprised that she raised it directly, adjusts her salary meaningfully that same review cycle, not because the company was hiding something maliciously, but simply because nobody else on the team had ever asked the same question. Elena also reads through her full benefits package in her first month, discovers the same professional development stipend Michael ignored for years, and immediately starts using it toward a certification relevant to her role. 5 years later, Elena and Michael are earning noticeably different salaries, despite starting at nearly the same number, doing comparable work at the same company. The difference isn't talent, it isn't luck. It's simply that Elena treated compensation as something to actively manage, while Michael treated it as something that would be handled for him. It's also worth understanding why this silence exists in the first place, because it's not usually personal, and it's rarely malicious. It comes down to incentives. Managers are typically evaluated on team budgets and cost control, not on how generously they compensate each individual employee. A manager who proactively tells every team member, "Hey, you should ask for more, and here's exactly how," is, in a very direct sense, working against their own performance metrics. That doesn't make managers villains. It just means their incentives rarely align with volunteering this information. HR departments similarly exist primarily to protect the company from legal and financial risk, not to serve as a personal advocate for maximizing your individual compensation. Their job is company first, by design. And companies as a whole benefit, in aggregate, from a workforce that doesn't ask too many questions. Not because leadership is plotting against employees specifically, but because unasked questions are, quite simply, cheaper for the business than answered ones. Understanding this changes how you should think about the relationship. It's not that anyone is lying to you, it's that the default is silence, and breaking that silence is entirely your responsibility. There are specific moments where this information gap matters most, and knowing them in advance means you can prepare instead of missing your window. The first moment is the initial job offer. This is the single highest leverage moment in the entire employment relationship, because it sets the baseline that every future raise gets calculated from. A percentage raise on a higher starting number is always worth more, in absolute dollars, than the same percentage raise on a lower one. The second moment is the annual or semi-annual performance review. This is when raise budgets are actually being decided, whether or not you're in the room for that conversation. Walking into a review with a documented list of specific accomplishments framed in terms of value delivered to the company dramatically changes how that conversation goes compared to simply waiting to be told your new number. The third moment is any transition, a promotion, a new role, a department transfer, or a significant increase in responsibilities. Anytime your job changes meaningfully, that's a natural low-friction opportunity to renegotiate your compensation, because the market rate for your new responsibilities may be entirely different from what you're currently earning. And the fourth moment, the one most people avoid entirely out of fear, is when you receive an outside offer or are seriously considering leaving. This is uncomfortable to talk about, but it's simply true. Companies often reveal flexibility at this exact moment that never existed in any previous conversation. You don't have to use this as a manipulation tactic, but understanding that this leverage exists means you're not walking in blind. So how do you actually apply all of this without feeling manipulative or aggressive? First, always assume the first offer has room. Not always a lot of room, but almost always some. A simple, respectful question like asking whether there's flexibility in the offer costs you nothing, and the data consistently shows it rarely damages the relationship when done professionally. Second, document your accomplishments continuously, not just before a review. Keep a running list, updated monthly, of specific outcomes you've delivered, revenue generated, costs saved, problem solved, projects completed. When raise season arrives, you'll have concrete evidence instead of a vague sense that you've worked hard this year. Third, actually read your full benefits package, once a year, cover to cover. Most employees only skim their benefits during onboarding and never revisit them. Set a yearly reminder to review everything available: retirement matching, wellness stipends, professional development funds, healthcare options. Because using benefits you're already entitled to is the lowest risk way to increase your total compensation. Fourth, ask your manager directly, at least once a year, what it would take to get to the next compensation level. This single question shifts the responsibility for that information from "hope they mention it" to "they now have to answer you directly." Fifth, understand that leverage doesn't require dishonesty. You don't need a fake offer or a threat to leave in order to have a productive conversation about your value. Simply knowing your market rate, documenting your contributions, and asking clear, direct questions is usually enough to close a meaningful portion of this information gap on its own. If this video changed how you think about your own workplace, that's exactly the point. The silence around compensation and benefits isn't something companies are hiding maliciously. It's simply something nobody is required to volunteer, which means the only person responsible for closing that gap is you. At the end of the day, what employers never tell you isn't a secret conspiracy. It's simply the natural result of a relationship where one side benefits from your silence, and the other side has no obligation to break it for you. The people who build real financial security at work aren't necessarily the hardest workers in the room. They're the ones who learned to ask the questions nobody was going to ask for them, turning years of quiet, unnoticed effort into compensation that actually reflects the value they bring. Here at The Bigger Picture, we'll always explore the financial questions that truly matter, not with fear, not with sensational headlines, but with honest conversations, clear explanations, and the bigger picture behind every story